Okay, let's do some 3-blind example solves. This will be pretty much completely unscripted and unedited, just so I can show you my authentic thought process when approaching these scrambles, which, by the way, I've never seen before. Before we begin, I should probably mention that the way that I trace edges is very distinct from how most people do it. Most people who know full floating will have edge memo that very closely resembles that of people who don't know floating, where they do cycle breaks and everything. But the method that I use, called dlin tracing, completely eliminates cycle breaks. Whenever we hit our buffer, we keep track of the parity and the orientation of the cycle and just float no matter what. And even if these cycles are incomplete and can't be solved by themselves, that's fine. We'll link them in execution. So let's begin with the first scramble. These will be in the description, of course. Let me turn on draw scramble just to make sure these are correct. Okay, this looks good. So here we get this in this orientation. We'll rotate here to my orientation, which is white-green. So if that's not your orientation, just scramble in orientation. But yeah, let's begin. Primary corner buffer is UFR, so we'll trace here. So that's the first target, right? And this goes back to our buffer. Now I have a system for tracking corner orientation, or corner buffer orientation. And the way I do that is I remember which sticker goes on top. In this case, the red sticker is going to end up on the top here. But I don't do full dlin tracing for corners. I will cycle break to here anyway. The reason that I'm going to cycle break to UFL rather than UBR is simply because UFL is my primary corner buffer other than UFR. Sorry, it's my first floating corner buffer. So if this cycle ends up being possible to float, this gives me the least mental overhead when managing that float. And also, this column is pretty fast anyway. It'll be fine. Then we go from here to, so remember that this was one target and two targets, so that's the end of a letter pair. So then we go here to here, then here to here, and then here to here. And that's the end of corners. That's just 8 targets. Turns out that we couldn't float that, but that's okay. Let's start tracing edges. There's no pseudo swap because there's no parity. Primary buffer is UFR, or sorry, UF. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm counting just so you can have a better idea of the parity, if that matters. 9, 10. Okay, so that's 10 targets, and we hit the wrong side of the buffer, meaning this is an even misoriented cycle. In this case, it's really obvious how it solves, but the general way to approach a cycle that isn't even oriented is that you want to pair it with a cycle of the same type. That's the ideal way to approach them, but sometimes that's not actually possible. And in those cases, what you have is one even misoriented cycle plus one odd oriented plus one odd misoriented. That's probably just word salad to most of you, but that's fine. Most of you aren't going to be using this tracing method anyway. But even misoriented after 10 targets means the only thing we have left is an edge flip, which is right here. And there are many ways to solve this, which I'll go over later in execution. But anyway, let's just get started. Here to here to here. By the way, if there's any comm or alg that you want me to write out, just leave a comment and with a timestamp, and I'll do that. So let's go here to here to here. I just switched to RUS for these recently. It's very, very nice. Here to here to here. Now here to here to here. Now here we have this comm plus this this flip. So in many cases, you're able to do some like kind of really fancy things. But here, I think I would simply just break into the flip, and I'll go here to here to here. Then we hit the other side of this, and we trace to this side, and that means after breaking into the flip, we'll need to hit the other side of it. So we have this comm and then this comm. So we do that, followed by that to solve edges. Now let's do our corners. We have here to here to here. Then this, followed by this. And finally, we have this column. So that's scramble 1. Now scramble 2. All right, so we'll reorient to right here, start tracing corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 targets, and we have a green-oriented corner. And now I'll quickly look at UBL, since that would be the first unsolved buffer in my order. Even though it's very unlikely we'll be able to do anything with it, in this case there actually is something we can do with it, because this forms an oriented 2 swap. So that means, assuming we have parity, which we can pretty clearly see we do now, we can do UB-UL swap to force this really nice parity. So I'll just remember this visually, but then, yeah, we see this final corner twist right here, which we'll deal with on the UFR cycle, because remember, the UFR corner ended here misoriented, so this is the thing that'll solve it. So yeah, we traced corners and got parity, and we have this case, right? So we're going to do UB-UL swap to deal with it. We do have this solved edge back here, which is a little unfortunate that we can't take advantage of it, but yeah, I need to learn more alternate pseudoswaps. That's on me. Anyway, let's just trace edges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and remember, this doesn't go here, it goes here, 6, 7. That's odd oriented. And we didn't hit UR yet, so we're going to use that as our other buffer. And we're going to be on the lookout for another odd-oriented cycle, because that would be the best way to solve this UF cycle. So I go 1, 2, 3. Oh, look, that is another odd-oriented cycle. And that finishes edges. So the way we're going to solve these is just do the UF columns, and with that last target, we'll just cycle break into here. So let's go. We go here, here, here. Sorry, that was a little scuffed. Here to here to here. Now here to here. Remember back here. Now we'll cycle break into UR because that's just really nice in this case. I have ways to cycle break into other spots using this tracing method, which I might get into. Do that, and finally this. Now for corners, we'll do that and this. Now with this corner twist, so we have a U prime D2 to finish off that column we were just doing. But with a double U layer twists, there are always multiple ways to do them, so you want to be on the lookout for cancels. And if I don't undo that U prime, we can just cancel into that twist. And actually that twist starts to cancel into this parity as well. So that ends up being like a really nice and smooth ending to the solve. So that's solve 2. I know I'm going kind of quick on these, but this isn't meant to be a full tutorial of my tracing method. I just wanted to kind of show some ideas that I've been working with. So, okay, let's start tracing corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now this is misoriented, but it doesn't really matter. There's only one target left to hit, so that means we know it's a corner twist back here, which we can just remember visually. So no parity, meaning no pseudo swap in edges. So let's just start tracing from UF. Go here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the wrong side of the buffer. So that means we have odd misoriented. So if possible, find another odd misoriented. Otherwise, figure it out. So let's start tracing from UB since we haven't hit it yet. So you go 1, 2, and that's even oriented. And when a cycle is even oriented, I sometimes just call them like closed cycles, because we can just perform cons from that buffer to solve them independently of any other cycles. And they're really nice that way. I usually try to execute them first because they require little to no thinking, and it gives me more time to construct the other cycles on the puzzle. But then, yeah, UR is our next buffer we haven't hit, and it goes here and to the wrong side of the buffer, meaning that it matches the UF cycle, and yeah, he didn't come with an edge flip or anything like that. So we'll start executing, and remember, we're gonna start with this UB cycle because it's right out in the open. Then we'll start doing our UF targets like this. And now we have this going to, so here's the thing. This is a case called, 2e2e prime. It's 2e2e, but each cycle is misoriented. And we aren't really restricted to cycle breaking to any particular location with these. It's very easy to cycle break anywhere and just calculate what's going to happen afterwards. I think the target that I would like the most on this would be RU, so I'm gonna go ahead with that. And so I would have memorized it here, and my letter for this is D. So I would have just memorized it as D and made a mental note that, or possibly just visually, but let's assume that I used letters. It would just be D, and I'd make a mental note that the cycle is misoriented. So if I shot here, then it would just be to the flip of D, followed by the flip of where you first broke. So it'd be to RU, LU, UR. If I did it visually, it'd be even easier. But either way, it really doesn't require much thinking to solve 2e2e primes in, pretty much any conceivable way. So let's go ahead with that. And then this column. So okay, now corners, we'll do this. Then this. Now, in these sorts of cases, it is technically possible to break into corner twists, but it takes a lot more thinking than edges, and the benefit is way smaller because corner twists are pretty fast. So I think I would just do calm plus twists. And remember to be thinking about cancels into twists, but here it's not really possible, so we'll just do that. All right, now solve for. Okay, it comes in orientation. So we'll start tracing corners. 1, 2. Okay, so that's 2 targets, and we have green top. Start tracing from UFL. Well, not start tracing from UFL. We'll cycle break to UFL. Go 1, 2, 3. Now we need to do a little bit of buffer orientation math. It's not complicated, trust me. This is the reason why people don't track corner buffer orientation. Just bear with me for a second. So after these first 2 targets, we had green on top, right? Now after these 3 targets, this lands on the orange sticker. So imagine like these 2 stickers. Now imagine like the U layer stickers of corner twists are right here. The fact that like these would be incompatible corner twists means that these will not sum to a solved orientation. So basically this goes from, since this UFL cycle is misoriented, this green top corner can't stay green top, right? So it can either go to white top, which means it would be oriented, or red top. And the only place it can go is red top. And this sounds really complicated, I know. But this process is completely automated in my mind right now. And I just know that I would know instantly that the sum of these cycles would put the red sticker of that corner on top, assuming you're in my orientation and everything. So let's continue. So our 5th target was here. Let's break to UBL. So this comm is not great, but we can back out of it if we need to or want to. Then that goes here to here. And then we have this corner twist over here. So if my thinking is correct, I wouldn't be thinking about this in a solve, but I don't believe there is any way to recombine these cycles to save an alg. I think we're just stuck with 5 alg corners. Either way, I would just do that in a solve, but I don't know. It's fun to think about that sort of thing sometimes. So yeah, there's no parity, so there's no pseudoswap. Let's start tracing UF. 1, 2, 3. Okay, odd misoriented. Let's look for another cycle of the same type. Start tracing from UL. Oh, that's a flip, meaning that's even misoriented. So we have 2 cycles that can't be solved by themselves and are of different types. So there's two possibilities that could be at play. Either there's another cycle of each of those types on the cube, or there is one cycle that is, so in this case we have odd misoriented and even misoriented. In this case, if you added those up, you would need odd oriented to create even oriented as the sum of those cycles. So that could be the cycle that's on the cube. Let's find out. Let's trace from UR. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that is even oriented. So that's probably what we're going to execute first because that's least thinking. And then let's start tracing from FR because that's the next piece in my buffer order that we haven't hit yet. And that just goes back here. And that's odd oriented, meaning that UF, UB, and FR cycles all sum to even oriented, which is what we need. So there are lots of ways we can combine these, and I won't really talk about all of them right now. Let's just solve the UR cycles, and we would, in the solve, just be thinking during that. So we have here to here to here. We can do that, then here to here to here, like that. So now, with these cycles, typically, you're just doing one cycle, cycle breaking into the next, cycle breaking into the next. But in this case, our even misoriented cycle is actually just a flipped edge. So in this case, one thing that's really good to do is to, once you finish this cycle, which is going to be odd, instead of breaking into the other odd cycle, just break into the flip immediately. And what that does is it makes it so that you don't have to be reversing the orientation of your targets at all. You can just go into your other cycle after the flip because it is unchanged. So let's actually just do that right now. So we go here to here, like that. And in this case, one thing that's really cool about this is we can just force a 4 mover like that. And then we just continue on. So yeah. Not only can this way of tracing save algs, but you can also just force really nice ones all the same. So anyway, let's continue with that. And then here to here was what I traced. Now, okay, there are a few things that are really cool that you could do here. Either I could break to a different spot. That's actually not that hard in this case. I probably wouldn't just because I do a lot of thinking in my solves to begin with, and I'm not really good at judging corner columns being better than one another. The other thing we could do is break into the twist between cycles, but that also seems overly complicated. I think what I'd probably do is the most vanilla solution possible, where I go here, then we'll go here, and then we'll cancel into the twist. All right, so now final solve. Okay, yeah, that's the right scramble. 1, 2, 3, 4. We hit the buffer, but I saw these two were solved, so that means we only just have this twist left. So, okay, really easy corners, 3 algs, no parity. Let's get into edges. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, I'm looking through the viewfinder. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so that's odd oriented. And because I had 9 targets, that means there's going to be some 2 edge swaps somewhere on the cube. And yeah, it's DF and LD. So we can just remember that visually. And like with 2e prime, 2e is even easier to find, to intuitively produce any solution to it. So we'll just do that once we get to the point where we're breaking into that cycle. But let's just start by reducing this UF cycle. Still do the MU for that. Then this. Okay, so now that we're here, we can choose any of these 4 spots to break into for this target. I honestly think in a solve, I would just go to DF because it's pretty fast, but LD is probably the best option outright. Let's just do that. And then generate that. So now this comm, very easy. This comm, I still do this, which, you know, you might not like it. I find it fine. And then finally, this twist. So that's it. I can probably make more of these if people are interested, or also a video that just fully explains the ins and outs of dlin tracing as far as I know for now. But I hope this was insightful more than anything. I think there's a lot of things that are unexplored in terms of forcing good comm quality using dlin tracing style techniques. But yeah, I don't know. That's about it.